Okay, welcome guys to our expression lesson. So welcome back actually, because we've done a lot already. So today we are talking about something that I quite like and that you probably quite hate, which are verbs and tenses. Reason why I like it is because once you actually get the hang of it, it's a bit like a big jigsaw puzzle. It's really cool. You get all the things that just come into place, and then you kind of understand things and you're like, oh yeah, of course. You'll get to that, but for now I completely understand. You're at that awkward point where you're slightly starting to see the end of the tunnel. You see the light, you kind of understand vaguely how it works, and you want to understand more, but you're a bit confused still. So there we are, that's why I'm here. So here we've done a lot already about using the verbs and the tenses in our grammar lessons. So we already talked about the present, the past, and the future. This week is the, oh, I don't want to say something stupid. I think it's either the imperfect or the conditional. One or the other is actually quite exciting. But the thing is, today we are actually learning why we are using all these tenses, why we're learning all these tenses. And that is because it's going to be really, really useful. So you all know that you are marked out of your range of structures, sometimes of verbs. So they don't specifically say range of verbs, they say range of language and accuracy. And then they tell you about complex structures and all that jazz. That actually includes verbs and all this kind of thing. So it's part of the mark schemes, and being able to put a lot of different verbs, varied verbs, with different tenses and different people is actually what is going to give you the points. So that is what we want to learn, and that's what we'll do today. So we want to be able to use verbs with a different range of people. It's not just I did this, I did that, tomorrow I'll do this, but also using other people, so other pronouns, so they, she, we, us. This is not pronoun, but you got my point. And we want you to be able to use different tenses, not just the past and the future, but then some different past, some different future. You already know this to future now. You kind of know this to past. They've already talked to you about it. They probably even taught you the imperfect at school, but you might not remember really what it is. In any case, that's what we want you to do, to be able to use a variety of tenses within the time frame as well. And then we're going to learn how to use complex past tense. So, for example, the pluperfect, that'll come later in the grammar lessons. Today, we're just using how to put them into content. And then to talk about the future using different time frames, even like the conditional, for example. But we'll see this in this lesson. So first thing first, I'll just share my screen with you. I'm going to let you do the get started, which is there. That's the first page. So it's called using a wide range of verb forms and tenses, just like I said. And right, the first thing first, we don't actually ask you to do that exam question, okay, just having a look at it, and then moving straight away to the get started, which is here. So using the exam style question, how does this person answer the question, and what you can recognize from it. So if you have a look here, if I zoom a little bit more, there is a table about pluperfect, imperfect, perfect, present, near future, conditional. Some of these verbs you know already, some of them you haven't seen before. So don't be too harsh on yourself if you can't actually recognize the pluperfect. For example, recognize the conditional. They are imperfect and conditional verbs, verb tenses that you've probably seen before, maybe not used. Pluperfect, I doubt you've seen it before, but if you do, I'll be very positively surprised. So I'll let you do the get started to have quite an idea of what we're going to talk about in the next pages. So I'll let you pause now and catch up with me later. And if you're back with me for after you get started and you want to do page number 1, page number 1 is on how to use different person of the verb. So when they say different person, they mean pronoun, they mean people, I, you, he, she, we, all this kind of things. It's important to use different pronouns because, first of all, it adds interest to the text. It's not just talking about me, myself, and I, it's talking about other people as well. Plus, it's also part of your manipulate the grammar easily points. So that's quite important. And it's very important to try and create authentic opportunities, not just to put pronouns just for the sake of it, but to try and embed it into something. So if you're telling stories, if you're talking about what you used to do when you were a kid, that's a good opportunity to include people. Well, I used to wake up every day to go to school with my mom because she worked at this time. You know, you've just included your mom and a verb with the she pronoun without having to force it too much. It's quite authentic. Then when you're talking about others' opinions, so you're talking about your opinion, talk about others' opinion. Well, in my opinion, social media is a fantastic thing because it allows me to stay in contact with my friends. However, my mom doesn't really like it because she thinks it's dangerous. There we are. Here again, you just talked about someone else without really forcing it into the text. It's quite authentic. It's fluid. It comes well. That's basically how you should do it. And then you can use it to talk about future plans as well. So, for example, this weekend, I'm going to go to the cinema with my best friend, Joe, but my mom would prefer me to stay at home and do my homework. There you are. Again, you just used my mom, you used prefer in a future tense using a she pronoun. It looks fantastic. It's not forceful. That's basically how you should do it. Okay, so that's basically what we're expecting from you here. When we say different person, different pronoun, we want you to be quite authentic. So yeah, here they have some tips for you. So how to avoid using je, talk about several people, say mon équipe et moi, so my team and I, which is still talking about yourself, but including your team as well, which is a we pronoun. To be honest, possibilities are endless. So just use your imagination and remember that your originality is actually quite rewarded in your text, not in your translation, of course, because you're supposed to stick to the paper. But in a 150 word text, originality is definitely looked positively on. So that's for my page 1. Actually, it's not page 1, it's page 27, but for the number 1 of this unit. I'll let you pause this video and then complete this and come back to me. So there we are back here, and it's quite unusual, but I'm going to talk about 2 and 3 at the same time. Why? Because it's just talking about tenses. So number 2 is talking about the different past tense, and number 3 is talking about the different futures. And for me, it's quite in the same category. I mean, they're not the same tenses, of course, or the same time frame, but it's the same explanation. So I'll just talk about 2 and 3 at the same time. And that's basically what I was telling you earlier. It's like using your tenses within the same time frame, different tenses to try and vary the range of structures that you're using. So it depends on the context, on the situation. If you're talking about what happened yesterday, the consequences of something you did. So, for example, I dropped a vase and it broke, and then today when I walked, I just damaged my foot. You know, that's like consequence. Yesterday something happened, today you have a consequence. And if you're telling a story about what happened yesterday, yesterday I went to the cinema on a date with that guy and I waited for hours because it just never came up. There we are. That kind of situation would be the perfect tense, the passé composé. But then think about if you're telling about something, a routine in the past, like I told you earlier. When I was young, I used to wake up every day at 7 and then eat my breakfast, go to school. There you are. When I was young, I used to imperfect. You know, it's like you're still talking about the past, but you'll be using a different type of past according to the situation. That is really what is going to make a difference. What is going to make a difference with the rest, because you're not just using the passé composé, you're using different tenses. And then the last tense of the past is the pluperfect. Pluperfect that we haven't learned together yet, but you will come to it. But at the moment, the pluperfect, just letting you know, you probably won't be able to use it, but you can recognize it. It's a tense in which you will be able to talk about something in the past of the past. So, for example, instead of saying, I have eaten my apple, you'd say, yesterday I was about to eat my apple when, or I had eaten my apple and then I got angry again, I got hungry again, right? So it's a past in the past. It's like your difference between have been and had been, if that makes sense. But here again, you can use the pluperfect to, if you're talking about something yesterday, you're telling a story about yesterday, and then you're saying, well, the day before I had already done this, and then my mom just, you know, she just told me off. So like yesterday I was at home, I was reading my book, and then my mom arrived and she told me off because I didn't do my homework. But I had already done them yesterday. They are pluperfect. That can be a very good way to vary your text to make it more interesting. And it's the same thing for the future. So future, different forms of the future. You have the near future and the simple future that we've learned last time. You can also use the conditional. It is widely recognized as a tense, as a time frame of the future, even though it's not exactly the same timeline. It's still kind of recognized in the future. So there you are. You can say, well, tomorrow I'm going to go to the cinema, but next year I will go to university. You just use two tenses without even realizing it, but it makes your sentence a lot more rich, basically. Okay, so what I'm going to share with you is a time matrix that I've actually put on the free Facebook group, but if you don't have access to this, you might not have seen it. So I'm just going to share it under this video, time matrix, so you can have a look at this. And in the meantime, I let you complete 28, 29 for the page, and then I'll let you go on the U-turn. So the U-turn, if you have a look very quickly, there we are, is, as you know, an exam question. So here you have the exam style question with someone, I think it's Aiden, there we are. Aiden is answering. First thing first, just have a look at Aiden's question, what he's done, how he's used the different tenses. If you don't know how to use the pluperfect or recognize it, just skip it. We'll come to this in our grammar lessons, but don't worry yourself too much over it. Okay, and then once you've done this, the your turn is actually about writing your own 150 words, but first jotting your ideas to make sure that you have a plan. So it's important to always make a plan of what you're going to write before you write it. Therefore, you know how to include everything, because you only have 150 words. So you need to make sure you include everything in that amount of time and in that amount of space with the relevant information. So make sure you plan everything before you write down. And then I'll let you submit all this, and that's it for me. So good luck for that, and let me know if you have any questions as usual.